Hello lovely friends, welcome back. My name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and today I am starting the next of my A to Z reading challenge videos, which is where I'm trying to read down my physical TBR by reading a book representing each letter of the alphabet in order. Why am I doing this? Because apparently I thought I needed another challenge. This is part 3, because I'm doing them in 4 book chunks. We are up to M. I mentioned in my TBR video that I was going to read Mr. Einstein's Secretary by Matthew Reilly, a book that's been on my TBR for absolutely ages because many moons ago, whenever a Matthew Reilly book came out, I read it the same day, and I clearly have not done this with this one. Mostly because I'm not always a huge fan of his historical fiction, mystery, thriller kind of stories. Also, I'm just getting older and there are things that I recognize in his work that are not always perfect. I still enjoy reading them, but there are certain things that, we can probably do without in this day and age. I ended up listening to the audio for it because me and holding this book was never going to happen. It is the story of Hannah Fisher. She grows up the next door neighbor to Albert Einstein, and he and her family are friends. And then in 1919, because of everything that's going on in the world and the war, Hannah's life is completely upended and she has to flee Germany, and she ends up finding work in America as a secretary, despite the fact that she is a very brilliant scientific mind, and she was able to keep up with Einstein's work. And it basically follows her life rising through the ranks as a secretary for a very prominent businessman into being recruited to work as a spy to find out information about what's going on with the Nazi party. She has a twin sister who is, it's never stated on page, but is essentially basically a sociopath who repeatedly steals Hannah's life. And it's all sort of very twisty and turny, and the narration for the audiobook was really good. I mean, I was able to keep up with the story. We're kind of jumping backwards and forwards through time initially as we're getting Hannah's life and her connection to Albert Einstein, and then her future work, and how, she goes through all of these stages as daughter and sister and scientist and secretary and spy, and how it all becomes very cyclical. And also, what happens when she finally is able to find an out from an ongoing roller coaster of a life. It was an interesting read. Took me ages to read it. I'm finally done. So my plan for the next book that I'm going to read for this particular wrap up is going to be The Nightmare Before Kissmas, N for Nightmare, by Sara Raasch. Haven't started it yet, meant to start it. August has been a lot, and I have mood read my way through most of it. But this is hopefully the next thing I'm going to read for this series. And I'll be back to update you when I do. Hi everyone, I am back with the rest of the books that I have read for this installment of the A to Z reading challenge. So I was reading books that started with M, N, O, and P. At the time when I was trying to read through these books, it was an interesting work week. There's another video where I talk about just how hectic and stressful it has been. But I have completed the rest of my books for that. So the first one was Mr. Einstein's Secretary, which I've spoken about already. Then for the letter N, I read The Nightmare Before Kissmas by Sara Raasch, which is the first book in this holiday series, but it's kind of queer romance meets paranormal with holiday seasons, and it's really fun. So in this case, we have Cole, who is the heir to Christmas, or the Christmas Empire, and he has some thoughts about the way his father has been running Christmas, and it's not all positive. He's been caught out before on many public relations violations, which have caused some tension between him and his dad, the current Santa Claus. Anyway, he is recalled and is drawn into one of his father's PR political plots, where he is going to be engaged in an arranged marriage to one of his best friends, Iris, who is the heir to Easter. They don't really want to be married. Like, they're quite happy as friends. And then, to make matters even worse, a plot twist is thrown in, and the Prince of Halloween turns up. His name is Hex, and he is there literally as a political pawn in this entire facade. And it is Cole and Hex's relationship, and it is really sweet and lovely. There's all the holiday kind of feelings, Christmas, Halloween, you name it, it's all rolled into here. And the political maneuvering in it was great and fun. And I love that there's this whole fake competition element, as apparently they're both vying for Iris's hand, although neither of them want to marry Iris. And it's entirely a political PR stunt move. That whole concept was really enjoyable, and I do have the follow-up book to this, so I will be reading that soon. Then I originally was planning on reading one of my pre-2025 TBR books for O, but I had to read and review Once a Villain by Vanessa, which is the third and final book in the Only a Monster series. Is that the right title? I always mix up the series title. Yeah, Only a Monster. And I figured that this actually was probably a better fit because I do need to review it sooner rather than later. And this is an Australian YA paranormal fantasy with romantic underpinnings. Weirdly enough, this had some surprise elements of polyamory in here that I was not expecting, and I'm here for it. It's all very YA appropriate. There's 3 characters that were kind of in a love triangle who ended up realizing that by the end of this book, maybe a relationship with all 3 of them would actually really work. So being the 3rd and final book in a trilogy, it's very, very hard to talk about the main plot of this book without spoiling the entire series. But essentially you have Joan, who is our main character. She belongs to a race of human-like beings who have the ability to travel backwards and forwards in time by stealing time from humans. The first 2 books really sets up the world that she lives in, the rules that she plays by that not necessarily every monster, as sort of they term themselves, follows. And by the time we hit book 3, she and her friends and allies have ended up in an alternate reality world that has been entirely created to ensure that monsters rule the world. And their job is trying to restore the original timeline to unmake sort of what has occurred. And it's through this process that she is dealing with her feelings for someone that she has loved throughout time, who happens to be a monster hunter and is responsible for hunting many of her kind, and her family is responsible for hunting his family down, and also another monster who she also has feelings for, and you know, the other 2 might have feelings for each other as well. So like this was really fun. It took me a minute to get back into the world just because it's been a while since I read the first 2 books, but I remembered why I liked it. I liked this idea of alternate timelines and the whole premise of the monsters and how they can travel backwards and forwards in time, and I really like the resolution in this one as well. The absolute final resolution at the very end, when what they've done has caused a change and that change impacts everyone. Like I deeply appreciated that. There's a lot of casual queerness in here as well, which again, awesome. Highly recommend this. It's a great Australian urban fantasy paranormal kind of series. And then when I got to P, I was planning on reading Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, and I still really want to read this. I didn't end up reading it because the writing in this is tiny and I can't do it. I started it and I got a few pages in and I was getting a headache and dizzy just trying to actually read the very, very tiny print. Now, there's nothing wrong with my eyesight, but something that I've touched on in other videos and I have been meaning to make a full video on is that I'm really struggling at the moment with physical reading, like reading a physical book. And if it is this tiny, there is absolutely no way I can do it at the moment. And that is entirely just down to how my year has gone and my health and things like that. So this is not working for me at the moment. So it's technically a DNF, but it's not a I'm DNFing it and getting rid of it, because I really want to read this. I am hopefully going to try and either get a digital copy of it at some point in time or figure out some other way to read it. So then I went through my Kindle backlist and I started at the oldest books and I was working my way through from oldest to newest, and I was just going to pick whatever came up that started with P. The first book that came up was The Professor by Jessica Gadziala, which is part of the Seven Sins MC paranormal romance series, which is a demon biker gang basically. And I got maybe a quarter of the way through the book and I wasn't really interested. The female protagonist is a professor of Greek mythology, I think, and the demon MC is trying to investigate the history of the gods because the gods are playing a part in this world, and I just wasn't interested in it, so I ended up putting it down. And because I am a completionist and I already did DNF'd 2 books, I had to find something else, right? So I ended up on Point of No Return by N.R. Walker, which is a queer romantic suspense kind of story. One of the main characters is a police detective. He and his partner and sort of the little team that they are in charge of, you know, hunting down and bringing very bad people to justice. And they've just kind of solved this case, but something about it isn't sitting right with our main character. And after this case is cracked, he and his friends, they go to the gym and they're there, and he takes kickboxing classes and his usual coach isn't there, and there is someone filling in, and that someone is Frankie, Frankie is his nickname, his name is Kira. They end up sparring and there is an attraction between the two of them, and it's them exploring that relationship while not letting anyone else know, because one's a cop and he's not sure how everyone else is going to take it, and he doesn't want to be known as the gay cop. And 2, the coach also isn't all that keen to be completely out. He's not in the closet, but he doesn't want to be completely out while he is working at a gym that is frequented by cops. And so the two of them are trying to manage this low-key relationship that all goes to hell when it turns out that someone that the detectives have been trying to track down, are able to track down the loved ones of all of the members of this little task force. And then everything gets blown wide open. It's not my favorite of N.R. Walker's books, but it was an interesting time and, you know, was probably what I needed at the point when I was reading it. So I can't complain about that. But yeah, that is the M to P portion of this reading challenge, which means we're up to RST and U for the next reading vlog. Can't remember if I've had a think about what I'm going to read for it. Anyway, that will be in the next vlog. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Lots of different titles, a range of, you know, different genres as per usual, which I think is probably one of the fun things about this particular reading vlog series that I'm doing, is that I don't think I've consistently read one particular genre, which I think is probably more representative of my reading style. Anyway, in the comments, I'd love to know, have you read any of these books or are you planning on picking any of them up? Feel free to let me know down below. Otherwise, feel free to leave a book stack emoji to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.